did Big Pharma and Purdue Pharmaceutical create or cause the opioid epidemic? Please join me in my vision to create a society where those suffering from substance abuse can live with dignity and hope. You can easily do that by pressing the subscribe button and the notification bell. Hi, I'm Dr. B. I'm a medical doctor. The field I work in is addiction and substance abuse, and essentially every day I see the impact of the opioid epidemic by dozens of patients coming through all of my offices and the programs I work with. And I feel I have a particular insight into this issue. To answer the question, are the drug companies, the big pharma companies, in particular Purdue, which is the mother of them all in this issue, are the drug companies responsible for the opioid crisis? Another way to put the question is, did Purdue Pharmaceutical and the other complicit drug companies, did they cause the opioid epidemic? And this question is going around on the internet. Everyone's talking about it. In my medical office or on the street, people talk about, God, those drug companies, those bastards or son of a guns, they caused the opioid crisis. And that's the question. And I think I am going to give you what we often don't do, is a critical answer to this question. Number one, we use the terms like causation way too loosely. Okay? If we are going to say A causes B, okay, and we really want to understand, does A cause B? Did the pharmaceutical companies cause the opioid epidemic? There's several concepts involved here. One is intentionality. Was there an intention to cause B? And there's another very, very important concept in linguistics and philosophy of language, which those guys refer to as agency. Who is the agent of the action that caused B? Okay? And so in the simplest manner, when guys are doing science, or guys that actually study what's called philosophy of science, the pool ball A caused pool ball B to move. The stick hit pool ball A, which caused pool ball B to move. And in that situation, you are analyzing causation in a vacuum of other mitigating factors. The problem here is that saying Purdue Pharmaceutical caused the opioid epidemic, it's a complete misunderstanding of the concept of causation, because now we're talking about very, very complex interacting social factors that are responsible for causing a very, very complex interrelated set of social factors. In some senses, are they responsible? Absolutely. If you go back and look at the history, was there, in the colloquial sense, not in the technical legal sense, because I don't know, are they criminal, unethical, completely lack a moral compass in what they did? Absolutely. In fact, I recommend Sam Quinones, I think I'm pronouncing that, his book. He's a wonderful writer, a well-known journalist, and he wrote a book called Dreamland. And he does a nice analysis of this issue. And to the best of my recollection, it's been a while since I read the book, but he looks at a set of social circumstances and factors that sort of came together at the right time, at the same time, and contributed to the massive explosion of the opioid epidemic. These had to do with massive social, economic changes that were happening in our country and in the Ohio Basin and the places this was occurring. Number two, black tar heroin being turned into a sort of a McDonald's model of sales by certain areas in Mexico, the rancheros that brought this stuff here and were distributing it at a very cheap price. At the same time, Purdue Pharmaceutical, and it's a very interesting history. If you look at the pharmaceutical part, it all goes back to 1981 or 1982. A letter written by a Harvard doctor, I believe it was Harvard, and published in New England Journal of Medicine. And that letter simply was, he was stating that he looked at some of the data with some of their pain patients and noticed that, hey, if their pain is controlled appropriately, they do not need more pain medication and they do not get addicted. It was something like that. Purdue Pharmaceutical took this letter and basically used it as their marketing campaign throughout the 80s, 90s, and the rest is history. But what I want you to understand here is using a letter to a professional journal and reporting some findings and then taking that letter and using it as marketing to doctors as bona fide solid research as to why they should prescribe opiate medication and it does not cause addiction. Let me give you an analogy. It's like a young man riding his tricycle and he does it very well. That would be the letter. And then I take him and put him in a Formula One race car and say, go at it, you're okay, because you ride that tricycle amazingly well. That's the difference in the quality of the evidence, the quality of evidence of a letter versus true clinical research. Okay. Now let me show you, yes, what they did in some senses, they're absolutely responsible. So let me show you a few pictures from the history of Big Pharma and their marketing campaigns for opioids. One of those pictures, as you can see here, this is the infamous Rush Limbaugh, who, as we all know, eventually ended up admitting his serious opiate addiction and addiction to pills, and he went into rehab. And at the time where he put this out, it says, I couldn't get through my day without it. I'm sure he couldn't, because he had a wonderful euphoric high and was going through the day and enjoying himself and feeling great because he was doped up. Now, this is one of the pieces of marketing campaign used by big pharmaceutical industry, which in most countries of the world, that first order marketing to the consumer by the drug company is actually illegal. There's no first world countries except the United States, I believe Pakistan, and one other country where this kind of thing is actually legal. But here in the good old United States, it's legal. So here's one piece of marketing that is, trust me, it works. These guys spend millions of dollars to make sure it works. Here's another piece of marketing by these guys. Your doctor might prescribe an opiate medication. I think this was directly from Purdue. Less than 1% of patients become addicted. It's a complete categorical lie based on no solid, valued research. And here is another piece of marketing. It's actually legal, and they pulled it off. Okay. Here's another amazing one for OxyContin, which is Purdue. They actually have two good-looking young people and says, it gets you high. And yes, it does. This was actually on a bus stop at some point, and it says, it gets you high. Okay? So, I want you to keep these three things in mind and the power of marketing and what these guys did. And you might say to me, yes, well, they are absolutely criminal. They should be prosecuted. This is all their fault. The opioid epidemic is their fault. Okay? Now, let me ask you this. If it is their fault, okay, let's look at some other nice pictures and then let's really critically analyze the way we think and then question where's our thinking coming from. Okay? Let me show you actually, and then finally one more. Freedom from pain. You got a guy bent over and next thing you know, extra strength pain relief free of extra prescribing restrictions. Awesome. I can get dope really free. And here's basically a rock in pain, and he rises up to be this good-looking, handsome young man that is the picture of what every American wants to be and strives to be, because that will make your life free, agile. You will get all the woman you want. He looks happy. He looks rich. He looks without any worries. And that is the dream of every American, right? So here's one last one, okay? So, as I said, you can look at this and say, okay, there's the marketing. These guys are real pieces of work. They are criminals. They caused the opioid epidemic. Here's my proof. They were doing this. Okay, keep that in mind. All right. That being said, hey, let's take a look at something else. There's a wonderful ad from Heineken. It's a 8-month-old drinking a beer. Why? We have the youngest customers in the business. Nothing does it like Heineken. This is an ad for what is known to be a toxin. Alcohol is a toxin. Okay? And I'll even say more about this in a second. Okay? And you might turn around and say to me, well, this ad looks old. This was a long time ago. Well, it depends how old you are. It wasn't that long ago. There is a baby there drinking a Heineken, and you can read the thing that it's talking about. It says, this young man is only 11 months old, and he isn't even our youngest customer by any means. And then it goes on talking about pregnant mothers should be drinking beer. Okay? And it goes from there. You could say, well, this is an old ad about alcohol, so what? Well, here's another awesome ad that's pretty new, and it's about alcohol. And it really sums up our cultural attitudes in the world that's really, I'm going to argue and say, it's not mine. It's not yours. It's not any of us. But I want you to see where we get our values and world from. Here's a young couple in a really compromising position that sells sex, beauty, elegance, success, happiness. And drinking that beer will bring that for you. And it even promotes a really toxic concept. Party now, apologize later. Okay, this is for a very Christian country that we are supposed to be full of values that are based in the biblical Judeo-Christian tradition. Okay, this is an ad that's completely legal. It's recent, and what it is advertising is one of the most harmful toxins on the planet, and everything that it's selling by the picture is a complete lie. And even the slogan, party now, apologize later. No different than the slogan on the advertisements that say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. I'm not sure what that really means. Should somebody cheat on their wife? Should they do a whole bunch of cocaine and heroin? Should they blow $15,000, $20,000 on the gambling table? I'm not sure what that means. I'm not being moralizing. I'm just getting to a point here. So now you've seen the alcohol ads, and you have also seen the opiate ads. Okay? Now that's alcohol. Okay? And you might say, okay, so what? Okay, alcohol. Opiates were legal. Alcohol was legal. Let me read you a few statistics about alcohol here. Just so you know, last year I think it was, we're at the height of the opioid epidemic right now. And I believe last year, or 2017 or 18, 72,000 people died from opioid overdoses. Okay? And most of those were, in 25 to 39-year-old age or something like that. And it's for the first time, it's the leading cause of death beyond trauma in young people. And much is being made in the media about that, just in the same way much is being made about in the media that Big Pharma is responsible for the opioid crisis. Estimated 88,000, this is straight from National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. It's affectionately referred to as NIAAA by myself and the establishment. An estimated 88,000 people died from alcohol-related causes annually, making alcohol the leading preventable cause of death in the United States. It's preventable, right? The first one is actually tobacco, legal drug with advertisement. We've got quite a bit of hold on that, and it's still the leading cause. And the second one is poor diet and physical activity. Now, the poor diet, I'm going to argue that that's actually leads physical activity quite a bit, but poor diet. And you know what? We have all the resources to have the best food in the world. That's one statistic. Here's another one about alcohol. Remember those advertisements, no different than the Purdue advertisements that are criminal. In 2014, alcohol impaired driving fatalities accounted for 9,967 deaths. 31% of overall driving fatalities. Okay, almost 10,000 deaths, and that's a 2014 number. And if you want to, you can go on the website and pull the data for year after year after year. Okay, let's talk about economic burden, because I often wonder about the economic burden of the opiate crisis, epidemic crisis, and the future of it. Let's talk about that. In 2010, alcohol misuse cost the United States $249 billion. Billion dollars. That's 2010. And they're not going over the years. And let me tell you, it's more than what they have, because I've actually looked at the data closely. And if you actually went to the WHO, World Health Organization website, the numbers are staggering and ridiculous. As I'm reading you these things, not only think about this opioid crisis issue and who's responsible, and they should be hung by the balls. Put your mind in some sort of rational, common sense, real perspective of the world you live in and what reality is. Okay, do that. And if you're doing it for once, do it for the first time in your life. It's actually refreshing. Here's a global burden. Okay, in 2012, 3.3 million deaths. 6% of all global deaths in 1 year were secondary in some way, shape, or form to the use of alcohol. Now look at this ad that I have here again. Take a look. There's a beer. There's a handsome young man. There's a handsome young lady in a very, very, very odd position, and it tells you party now, apologize later. I just want you to meditate on these thoughts that I'm telling you. In 2014, World Health Organization, and the statistics go on and on. I just pulled a few to look at. I've looked at all of these for years, and I've always sat here and looked at the world around me. In 2014, the World Health Organization reported that alcohol contributed to more than 200 diseases and injury-related health conditions. Some of these include liver cirrhosis, cancer, injuries. And in 2000%, 5.1% of the disease and injury burden worldwide was attributed to alcohol consumption. It comes out to about 140 million disability-adjusted life years, which is a technical public health statistical term. It's not important, it's a lot. Globally, alcohol misuse was the 5th leading risk factor for premature death and disability in 2010. Among people between the age of 15 and 49, hey, we're so concerned about the death of our young people with opiates and Big Pharma being the cause. It is the first leading cause of premature death and disability between the ages of 15 and 49. And in the 20 to 39-year-old, it is 25% of the total deaths can be attributable to alcohol. It's just the tip of the iceberg. And so if we're going to hold the drug companies, the pharmaceuticals, Big Pharma, responsible for, remember, causation, right? It takes an agent and it takes intention. They had both. But this is not me hitting a pool ball which hits another pool ball. There's a lot more factors involved. So I say, if we're going to hold the drug companies responsible for the opiate crisis, hell, we should start jailing and suing all bartenders. He's responsible. He gave you the alcohol for alcoholism, and all the manufacturers of the alcoholic beverages, okay, for all of its health and societal consequences. Now, I'm not necessarily suggesting that, but I want you to understand something, because if it was the alcoholic going to the bar and we saw the disease burden on society from what I just showed you, if we're going to hold if it was an alcoholic and this discussion was about the alcoholic, you would say, well, it was his choice and he went there. Okay? And the truth of the matter is this: it is our social values and our beliefs, which are actually dictated by these advertisements I just showed you, that create an atmosphere that allows Big Pharma to create a situation where they're giving you those pills. And at the root of all those beliefs, all of those views, all of those understandings of the world around us are sort of created in a very highly capitalistic social order. There's no thought. We are a reactionary society driven by whatever the media puts in front of us, and all of this is kind of shown by data. And now we're being reactionary. It's Big Pharma's fault and it's the doctor's fault, and now we're going to go extremely another way and cause more harm. It is the same mechanism of thought and false imposition of beliefs forced upon each one of us that created the situation in the first place. This open political economy and market allows them to come and say, hey, you have pain, take this medication. And it is that same atmosphere that says, oh my God, it's their fault, they caused it, so let's punish them and the problem will go away. It's a complex set of factors. Every single one of us has some accountability and responsibility for propping up the social, political, corporate organizations as they are, so they can create this situation and cause this kind of thing. So no, they're not. Are they good people? No. Should they have some culpability and accountability for what has happened? Absolutely. But the way to change things in the long run is to change our values and stop giving in to the social system and order that creates our beliefs, our values, and the way we approach things. I think there's a bigger message in all of this, and it's sort of the great bigger sociological thesis I want to make about substance abuse, heroin addiction, and so forth. Our approach to Big Pharma causing the opioid crisis is just as insane as far as blaming them strictly for it. It's just as insane in the same way we got caught up and caught into taking the opiates that were prescribed. It's a bigger social structure that's allowing this insanity to happen. Okay? We have essentially thrown out common sense as a people, and we can see this in our politics. We can see this in our approaches to our religious values and how we express them, and the really unholy, dysfunctional dystopia that we actually ascribe to and believe in that's not there. And eventually, as Noam Chomsky said, ignorance is bliss until it hits home. Okay, until things fall apart. And we're doing the same thing right now. We need to look at ourselves. And as one of my favorite intellectual heroes says, we are a culture of magical thinking. Whether it's our the pornification of our society, our obsession with gambling, with nonsense social media as people are dying of addiction, hunger, poverty, just right here in the United States, our attitudes towards public policy and public health, the way we imprison our own people. All of this, as unrelated as it may seem to you, is exactly in line with Purdue caused the opioid crisis. No, they didn't. They are partly responsible only because of the fact that we gave them the wheels to turn and make this happen. If I put a guy in an arena, okay, and I put two people in an arena, and then I hand him the knife, one of the guys the knife, and he goes and kills the other guy. Yes, he is absolutely responsible for killing the other guy. But if we already know that his nature is to kill, and we as a society hand him that knife, is he the only one responsible? I hope this generates a discussion, and please give me any kind of feedback you have in the comment section below, because I do want to know what you feel about this, your opinion on this, and your thoughts on this. I'm somebody that works with addiction every day, and I do see the bombastic consequences of it. So please leave your thoughts please leave your thoughts in the comment section below. If you enjoyed my take on this trending topic, please click on the video above.